Hi, welcome to another episode of Discovering Your Past. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with the president of the Massachusetts Society of Genealogists, Denise Picard Lindgren, and her upcoming talk at the New England Regional Genealogical Consortium's, the NERGC Conference, coming up April 26th through 29th. But first, we're going to chat with Heather Wilkinson Rojo all about the conference. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How did you get involved with the NERGC conference?
Well, I've attended quite a few of them, probably about 4 or 5, and I started as a blogger, wanting the bloggers to have a presence at the conference because I had seen that happen at the Southern California Genealogy Society Jamboree. And so I brought that to New England as part of the NERGC conference.
Oh, that's so exciting. How many bloggers do we have represented this year, officially?
Well, we have about 10 official bloggers, but there'll probably be 30 or 40 genealogy bloggers at the conference.
The bloggers are going to have a table to hang out at?
Yep, we're going to have a blogger center. Some people call it Blogger Island or just a media center. Last year we were in Providence and we had Dear Myrtle at the table and she was doing video for her. Have you ever watched her hangouts online?
Sure.
She was doing, I think she calls them ambush videos, where she was just snagging people that were going by. She'd say, "Oh, look, it's David Lambert from New England Historic Genealogy Society," and she'd just grab him and do a 5-minute interview. And that was kind of fun. But we have this media center where the bloggers can do their live blogging or interview people. It's a place to meet up or just charge your device or whatever you need during the day. So hope to see you there.
Oh, we will be there for sure. And I don't know about those ambush videos, but those sound kind of fun. Let's talk a little bit more about the conference. It's Wednesday to Saturday. And
yes, it's April 26th to 29th. Wednesday is a special day where people can sign up for all-day workshops on a certain track. Like there's a librarian's day on Wednesday, there's a DNA track, there's a professional genealogist track. Those all happen on Wednesday. And the conference officially is Thursday through Saturday with I think there are about 95 different presentations and workshops going on.
And the presentations and workshops are everything for beginner, intermediate, and advanced genealogists, correct?
Everything.
Everything?
A lot of things for beginners, and it's not all New England based. We have people attending who don't have any New England ancestors, but there's something for everybody.
That's fantastic. Which presentations are you looking forward to the most?
I'm signed up for a workshop on handwriting, which sounds really, paleography it's called. That's going to be fun.
I have such a hard time reading some of those records, so I think I should probably sign up for that too. That sounds like a blast. Any others?
I know that there are some speakers coming that I'm especially interested in seeing. Some, like Kenyatta Berry is coming. Thomas McKenty, who I know from blogging.
Yep.
He's big in social media. So there are certain speakers that I want to hit all their presentations.
So when do we need to sign up by?
There's an early bird special with a lower rate that applies until February 28th. So get your registration in for a discount. After that, you can still apply online or in the mail on the back of the registration brochure or at the door.
Heather, thanks so much for joining us here on Discovering Your Past and talking with us about the NERGC conference. And next up, we're going to be talking with Denise Picard Lindgren about French Canadian Catholic Sacramental records, and it's going to be a preview of her talk at the NERGC conference. Denise, tell us all about yourself.
Hi. Well, I don't know all about myself, but I'm currently the president of the Massachusetts Society of Genealogists. I've been doing genealogy for about 10 years, and boy, it's addictive, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is, isn't it? How did you get your start?
I got my start when a maiden aunt of mine died, and this was in 2008. My husband and I had just bought a house in New Hampshire, and because she never married, I was looked upon as a potential heir, and I received her death certificate. Well, on the death certificate was the name of her father, of course, who was my grandfather, which said he was born in Keene, New Hampshire. Now, if I had ever known that, I had long ago forgotten it. And I thought, I'm about 25 miles north. One day when I go take a trip to the big city, I'll go in and try to take a look. I went to the town hall and I found that my grandfather, whose name was Hugh, was originally named Paul. And of course there was the name of his parents. And it got closer and closer and closer to where we lived in New Hampshire until, believe it or not, I got back to Revolutionary War times, because of course once you start,
that's where you go.
So I went back to Revolutionary War times and I found an ancestor, a sixth great-grandfather who lived the next town over from where we had bought a place I had never seen before. And though I'll never prove it, I swear he had a hand in building the house that we bought.
Wow.
He was a joiner, a house builder, the next town over. The little village we live in, all the houses were built about the same time. Do you think somebody whose trade was house building came over for the big project?
I think that is certainly plausible, and that is such a great way to get started. It's those little stories like that just...
I think I was meant to find that. And I got so hooked because here I am in New Hampshire, and lo and behold, all of my English ancestors live within a few miles. So my husband and I could go out to breakfast and, let's stop at the town hall and check the land records. It's easy.
It's easy to get around in such connected small communities like we have here.
Exactly. And drive the back roads and realize, one of my ancestors probably built those stone walls that are there. So what's not addicting about
what's not to love about that? In April, you're going to be speaking at the New England Regional Genealogical Consortium, the NERGC is what we're going to call it from here on out, at their biennial conference.
Yes.
What are you going to be talking about?
I'm going to be talking about French Canadian ancestry. Picard is obviously recognized as a French Canadian name, and I'm going to be talking about ancestry, the sacramental records that we find, meaning the church records.
Okay.
The church records. And that's a big topic, but that's how genealogists use those records.
What are the different church records that we can find?
Well, of course, you have a little bit of a dividing point between your ancestors in the United States and your ancestors in Canada. But once you get back to Canada, the French Catholic records are the major way of finding what we would call vital records. Canada relied on the church to keep its records. So there's not a birth record, there's a baptism record. And usually the baptism was even that very same day or the next day. That was something that they wanted to do quickly. And generally they'll mention the birth record, but to the church, the event was the baptism. Mm-hmm. So baptism is one of them. Marriage, and usually there's a great deal of information around there of where they lived, what they did. And then not death, but burial. And as you can imagine, too, since we're talking about 19th century for most of us, that the burials happened quickly, too. But because that's a right of the church, or was a right of the church, the burial is what's recorded. The actual death date is probably mentioned, but that's secondary.
It's not always mentioned.
Not always. But many priests were very good And they would record a lot of this because they realized that these were also civil records. And so it was kind of dual.
Okay.
But of course, the priest is not an employee of the church. A priest's main function is the church rites. So that's what he's mainly concentrating on.
And I have some Hungarian roots, and I've seen a lot of that same thing, especially on the baptism records, that it is a baptism record, it's not a birth record.
And in a baptism record, unlike a birth record, there'll be a record of who the godparents are. Well, just like naming patterns in English, who the godparents are is an important thing. They're not somebody who they just grabbed off the street. They're an important person, probably a relation of some kind, maybe even, especially for the first children, the grandfathers, the grandmothers.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, another thing that's just the best idea. French Canadian women never lost their maiden name. They were born with it. I was born with Denise Picard. I would never take another name. I'm born and died with it. So a genealogist's dream, isn't it?
It's much easier to trace.
Although we're all named the same, but
well, you know.
But yeah, you never lose into a married name. You never lose a female into a married name because they didn't take their husband's names.
So Denise, where can we find these records?
Again, it depends on whether you're looking in the United States or you're looking in Canada. And it depends on where you are physically. I have found personally, being in New England, that the best way to get started, once I've gotten far enough back that I'm into Canada, which for me is only a couple of generations. Once you get far enough back, the easiest thing to do is to go to, for example, the American Canadian Genealogical Society in Manchester, New Hampshire, or there's also similar societies in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and in Vermont. There are New York ones too. If you're anywhere near a French Canadian Genealogical Library, they have compiled genealogies. And they're very easy to look up in the books. You know, it's so nice to look at something printed and compiled rather than, well, sort of in English, or just keywords.
Sort of in English?
Well, they don't call it baptism, they use the French term, but those are, it's easy enough to, don't ask me to pronounce it,
nope,
but it's
okay.
easy enough to know those few words. So if you go to the original records themselves, to start with, they're entries with a lot of boilerplate language, but they're in French and they're handwritten. It's a lot easier to start with something compiled. And because the French Canadians are so concerned about their genealogy, they tend to be very reliable. And any mistakes that were made in the Blue Druin books are often corrected by the staffs at the library. You know, it's interesting, they're so concerned. My father died in 2005, Picard. And I was Googling his name as genealogists to just see what I can find.
To see what hits.
See what comes up. And I find his obituary in the Genealogical Society of Quebec. And my father wasn't born in Canada. His parents weren't born in Canada. I'm thinking, why do they have his obituary? Well, it's very recognizable as of French Canadian origin, though they're not Picards, it's another name in Canada. But it's very recognizable, and they actually, to this day, in the 21st century, have people at places like Holyoke, Lowell, Manchester, collecting obituaries of names who are obviously originally came from Canada. So they're concerned about, I've been doing some reading, at one point they had millions of people coming over, and it was a big concern that they had so many French Canadians living on the wrong side of the border.
Oh boy.
meaning down here.
Sure.
They hated to have lost them, and they do try to keep track of them. And it was very interesting to me to write them and say, gee, I'm glad you have the obituary, but I'm wondering why. And that's when they told me that they still collect those for obvious names.
They're collecting them for future generations.
Yep.
Going to the different societies is a great place to go. Can we find any of these online?
You can. You can find the original records online. Ancestry has them. I believe Family Search has them too. And there are specialized French Canadian databases like the PRDH. But it's subscription. It'll cost you money, and you want to go to those records eventually. No experienced genealogist is going to start with just a compiled, well, they're going to start with it, but they're not going to end with just a compiled genealogy. They're going to want to go to the original records. But it's a lot easier when you have a line and you have, okay, who am I looking for? Another thing at these libraries is they have what they call repertoires. And it's not a TV show or it's not a stage show.
Ah.
It's another book that has for parishes baptisms, marriage, and burials. And it has the names. And so you want to pick up a family. Once you find where the married couple resided, what parish they belonged to, you can then go find the children and compile a family group from there. And again, it's printed, and you would want to go to the children's baptism records and confirm all of that. But it's an easy way to put together a tree initially and then go verify that.
So are those books like the old town books from like the New England towns?
They are compiled off of the church records. So again, there are no town records, but they don't reproduce the entire record. Okay. They simply say there was this is the baptism at this time. Then you can go on and it's all Drouin, who was a priest who compiled these things. You can then go to the original French handwritten records, and hopefully you find what matches up there. You confirm it. But when you get started, it's a lot easier.
That's your index to finding it in the Drouin books.
And it's not like, you may use an ancestry family tree to get a start, but these are much more accurate. Not 100%, not 100%. You want to go further in. Mm-hmm. But to get a start, that's the way I did it, and that's still what I would recommend people do.
I know that there's a couple of different Drouin books. There's a blue and a red.
Right. And then very early there's Jeté and Tanguay, and those are the founding. But you're getting back to the 1600s there, okay. Which in French Canadian genealogy is wicked easy to do.
Very, very quick. We found that out by going to the Society of Manchester, that within a half an hour, they had us on a whirlwind tour back to the Fidois, really.
Yes,
yeah.
You've got a skeleton. You think this is what I've got, but like you would do with any other type of genealogy, you put together a family group. Does this really hang together? Does this really make sense?
One of the websites earlier was the PRDH. PRDH.
And the D stands for Drouin.
Drouin, okay.
Yeah, they have that available in many of the French Canadian libraries. It's online. You search, and then you get and in French Canadian genealogy, because we're all named the same, if you were to Google Denise Picard, you would have billions of hits. You would never find me in there, ever. Because Denise, it's the patron saint of France, is Saint Denis. So, and Picard is a very common friend. Billions of us. And even back, the names are very similar. So you always look for a couple. You want to know the Denise Picard who married the Nathan Lindgren. I would never in Canada marry a Lutheran.
Yep.
But you need to search on a couple, because otherwise the name's the same is just too confusing. So you always search on a couple, and on PRDH that's true. And then what will come up on PRDH is, and it's a university project, so it's not even a commercial project, it's a university project. So what will come up are children, et cetera, and then you can click and you can link to the original records. There are mistakes there, but they have been correcting them. And you know, when you're working way back in the 1600s, they've had a while to correct any mistakes in the lineages.
Sure. And the people that are correcting these are people like you and me, essentially, that we're finding that there's errors, and
you usually bring it to a library, and then to one of these libraries, and say, hey, this doesn't make sense, and researchers and saying, well, no, that can't be right, or no, is that the right couple, or no, and it gets corrected as more research is done. It's like, well, yes, it is, or no, it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Can we go right to the churches, and if we know where the parishes are?
So if you're looking for recent records, yes, you can go to the churches. So if you're researching my father, you can go to the churches. What you have to remember, though, as a researcher, it's not like going to the town hall. It's not your right to see these records. The Catholic Church is a private entity, and a lot of parish offices are not equipped to welcome a genealogist in. If they have old records and they've not been preserved, they may not want you to see them. They may have qualms about how you're going to use them. They may have had bad experiences. And so, yes, depending on the time period, some of them are with the diocese. And this is where I think a lot of genealogy is finding out not only what records exist, but where they are.
Yep.
So, for example, the Boston Archdiocese, they have an archive, but that's not true of all of New England. You may have to go to the original church, and now with all the closings, they get scrambled. Where did they went somewhere. Yep. They weren't destroyed. They went somewhere because they're very important to Catholics. They went somewhere, they weren't destroyed, but sometimes it can be a bear to find out where.
I understand that the
NEHGS.
NEHGS, yes, the New England Historical Genealogical Society. They're involved with a big project with this?
They recently got permission from Cardinal O'Malley to film the archives. It starts at, I get this right, I believe 1789, when this was the only Catholic, this was the Central Catholic, and it was the only one that covered all of New England.
Yeah.
So from the earliest times up to 1900. And NEHGS over time will be filming those, digitizing them, indexing them. If you go to AmericanAncestors.org, now you can get, actually, and it's a wonderful explanation of what the records are, you can get free access to some of them. It's multi-year, and they're looking to raise money to complete it. But it's very, very exciting because this is the first time a major collection of Catholic records has been digitized or will be digitized. And they've promised to preserve the records on top, to give back. So they're preserving what's in the archive as well. And I mean, they've got some really old stuff and really interesting stuff. So Irish, I will find none of my ancestors in there, but Irish in Boston, very important for the Irish. I'm very excited about that. And they've already put up, as I said, a website to explain what the records are, where they come from, the history of the Archdiocese, and the history of Catholicism in New England, and it's great.
Do you have a tip for beginners, for people just starting out in genealogy?
When you're just starting out, see, when I just started out, I started with my English, so not much different than the French Canadian in that I ran into the names the same stuff. Trying to make sure you have identity. Very quickly you run into, okay, I have 6 Charles Cooks sitting in this town. Which is my guy? Are they all my guy? Are none of them my guy? What is it? So for a beginner, I'd say take it slow and build your line carefully. Build the skeleton, build the family groups. Again, does it make sense? Online, my grandparents, there's a tree. My grandfather must have been quite the stud because he fathered a child when he was 2, according to this tree, and when he was 4, and when he was 6, same name, he was named after his father.
Yep.
So the tree has him married to his mother. Now, that's not so bad, at least it's the same
Sure.
line. But you need to do the sanity checks and to ensure that you have the right individual, you need to know who he's associated with or she's associated with. They don't exist in a vacuum. So even as a beginner, don't just, I want to go back in that one line. I would double check when you're a beginner so you don't start to have a fictitious tree.
To all of a sudden break out and have 2-year-old fathers and such, yes. Yeah, and I think in at least from what I've seen in my family tree, the naming patterns are, father, grandfather, uncle, father, and it just keeps going like that. So
Right.
it can be very difficult to look up.
It can work the other way, though. With my cooks, with my English, if I don't have a Charles, a William, and a Henry, they're not my people.
Interesting.
So it makes it...
So that's something else to think about, that if all of a sudden you have
Stanley.
Stanley, you're like, ooh, wait a minute.
Maybe this isn't the right parent. These aren't the right parents, even though they have common names. What's up with that all of a sudden?
Wow. Well, Denise, thank you so much for joining us here on Discovering Your Past. And again, you're going to be speaking in April the 26th through the 29th in Springfield, Mass. At the NERGC Conference.
Yes.
And I believe that you're speaking on Friday, if I remember correctly from the brochure.
Yes, I'm also, as part of the Massachusetts Society of Genealogists, me and 2 other people from MASSOG are presenting Getting Into Genealogy. And it's a program that the Massachusetts Society developed to how you get started finding your family tree. And that's a separate sign-up, so people may be interested in that.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Well, I will see you there, and
Great.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
We hope to see you at the NERGC Conference, April 26th through 29th in Springfield, Massachusetts. For more information, check out nergc.org. Again, I wanted to thank Heather Wilkinson Rojo and Denise Picard Lindgren for joining us on Discovering Your Past. As a quick follow-up to the interview with Denise, which we recorded just before the large Roots Tech conference out in Salt Lake City, FindMyPast.com announced that they were releasing the Catholic Heritage Archive. According to their website, it's going to be the most comprehensive online collection of Roman Catholic records for the USA, Britain, and Ireland, up to 100 million records. And the map of the U.S. shows that it's going to cover the Archdiocese of New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. We look forward to exploring this collection. Thanks again for watching this episode of Discovering Your Past, and we hope to see you soon.